Welcome to the Numbered Nighters podcast. We are here today with a very, very special guest and a friend of ours and fellow speaker sister. And we have to tell you, she has an amazing story we can't wait to share with you.
That's right. I'm so glad that you made it here, and we can't wait to just have our audience understand how you manage through your life.
Yes.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes.
Great.
So we want to introduce to you our friend Hazel, and she's going to share a little bit about her story and how she went from pretty much homelessness to skating with Disney on ice. Take it away.
Oh, that is correct. It's a doozy, but I'm really, really excited to share my story in hopes that it will motivate and inspire other people to be brave and go after your dreams. It's something that you should do. You should honor yourself and do it, and it's something that you can do.
That's right.
Well, I know that when I first heard your story, I was taken aback by some of your early years and the things that you had to encounter. And I know our audience probably has many things that are similar.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to share about your early days.
Yeah, certainly. So I fell in love with figure skating when I was very young. I think I started taking lessons when I was just 7 years old, and it was something that I intuitively knew that was what I was meant to do with my life. And you know, if you look at a 7-year-old child, they're just having fun on the ice. They're just playing. And
That's right.
Adults don't really understand the impact that sport was having on me as a person. But I knew right away that was my love, my destiny.
That's awesome.
So we grew up in a middle-class family in Ontario. We were actually a family that was born in Scotland. So both my parents, my brother and I, we were born in Scotland. We emigrated to Canada when I was 9 months old. And we were living your typical middle-class lifestyle.
Yeah.
And when I started skating, it was like, wow, what is this sport? I love it. It was just something that I was so passionate about. And I started a competitive career and was quite, lucky that I got a really, really good coach, and I was on the competitive circuit making a name for myself. So I was about 9 years old at the time.
That's really exciting. I mean, 9 years old, most of us are still trying to figure out life at 9 years old. So that's wonderful.
So I got about 2.5 years of training under my belt, and I was serious about it. Like, I'd go to training before school and after school and competitions and off ice and all that stuff. So it was great. It was wonderful until the dominoes started to fall. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that happened was my coach announced that he was moving away to another province, and that was a very devastating blow. And it was kind of funny because I had asked my parents, like, well, can I go with him? Like, he was moving to New Brunswick from Ontario. And they're like, well, no, you can't. And I'm like, well, why? Like,
yeah. Isn't that funny how kids, we just think, oh, yeah, well, we could go too. Not a big deal.
Yeah,
I'm not
why?
doing anything.
Well, I think the reason why I had asked that was the last competition I did before this announcement was in Toronto, Ontario. And there was a bunch of scouts there looking for, potential athletes to train for the 88 Olympics. And they were being invited out to Edmonton, Alberta, to train at this elite school. And so I knew that young children, like maybe not as young as I was, but, 11, 12, 13, could move away from home and train.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted. I wanted to do it.
So it was a natural request from your perspective to say, can I go with him?
Can I go with him? Yes. I just thought, I'll just start early. I'm 9. I know what I want. Like, let me go. And my parents were like, no, you can't go with him. And I'm like, well, why? They're like, well, because you're our child. But this coach was wonderful. He was like a father figure to me. And I would have felt quite comfortable going. So anyway, they're like, no, you can't. You got to stay. And I'm like, So, and that was fine. He moved away. And I thought, I can still accomplish my dreams with another coach. It's not the end of the world. And I had started working with, this coach and then that coach, and, it was okay. And my mom had decided to take a trip to Scotland for the summer, and she's like, do you want to come with me? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool, because I wasn't really training-wise, there wasn't anything on the horizon. So we went away to Scotland for a 6-week vacation, which turned into 6 months. Oh, and the only reason why we had to come back was because we were landed immigrants. I was a landed immigrant, so you can't leave the country for more than 6 months. And it was a confusing time for me because I thought we were just going on vacation. Well, I found out that my parents were separating. So that was the second domino to fall. So when we came back to Canada, we were just home for maybe 6 weeks, and then we ended up leaving again. And my dad and my brother stayed in Ontario. He was 12 at the time, and he was given the choice. I wasn't given the choice. I was only 9. And so my mom was like, well, we're going to go back to Scotland for 6 months.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. I didn't want to go, but I didn't have a choice. So I went to Scotland, and during that time, I just desperately missed skating, and I just wanted to skate. And I would go down the road training. I'd do my jumps. I'd do my spins. I was always make-believing that I was on the ice. And
So did your mom encourage you in that particular area of pursuing your skating?
when I was skating, she was very encouraging. She, gave me mantras to say, like, you're Hazel Murphy, you can do anything you want. If you believe you can do it, you can do it. And that
Good.
really stayed with me to today. That was wonderful. She would make my skating dresses. She'd be the one taking me she'd be the one taking me to practice. And so she was very involved in my skating, and she was very encouraging with that sport. She knew that I had the talent to do something with it. I just think the financial burden was a bit much for my family. My brother was playing, travel soccer, and I think he started hockey at that time too. So we were kids that were in sports, and sports isn't cheap.
No.
Right.
So,
right. And figure skating, I've heard, actually is one of those more on the expensive side because I don't know what all the fees are that you have to have wrapped up in that. But I know like hockey also tends to be a very expensive sport for kids as well.
It is a very expensive sport, and my coach, he was brought over from Luxembourg, actually. His name is Paul. A lot of people called him Mr. C, and he was like a high-level coach, and a lot of skaters wanted to take lessons from him, but he went through our city and hand-picked students that he wanted to work with, and I was one of those students. I had started taking lessons previously from which would soon to be his wife. So I was getting lessons from Lori, and then he was brought over and I took lessons from him, and they kind of team taught together, and that's how I got under his wing. But he treated me like his daughter. He would give me lessons for free, and he'd be like, don't tell anyone. Or he'd give me extra time and lessons. And so it helped my family and it helped my training.
Yeah.
So I was very grateful for that.
That's awesome.
It's so important, isn't it, to have someone who understands your talent, who can encourage you to move forward, because, given your circumstances, when you said, it's expensive, maybe money was tight, those are big sacrifices that people are making on their behalf, your parents, for instance, even the coaches, when they see something in someone. So that's one of those areas of your life that you got that kind of feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got the support from him. He made me feel like I could do anything. So my mom was very supportive. My dad was supportive too, and my coach was like, he made me believe like I could accomplish anything on the ice. And so there was just so much positive reinforcement and so much positive belief in me that I thought I could do anything. I thought I could go win the Olympics.
Oh, wow.
So
That's awesome.
it was wonderful to have that in the early years. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how your coaches almost sometimes become like your biggest cheerleader and your biggest fan, and really also sometimes becomes your biggest confidant and the person that you confide in?
I was, so when he married Lori, I was his flower girl at his wedding. So he honestly, he treated me like his daughter. And years later, when I was skating for Disney on Ice, he had since moved from New Brunswick to Winnipeg. Our show traveled to Winnipeg, and I got to reconnect with him and go stay with his family and his kids.
Oh, that's great.
And he said to his kids, he goes, Miss Hazel is a very special lady. She was my first daughter. So he always talks about me as his first daughter. It was a special, special relationship.
Would you say that was partly because your parents had separated? Did you have a close relationship with your father during that period of time?
I wouldn't necessarily say I had a close relationship with my father. He was your typical Scotsman. He'd go to work and, he provided for the family. And he was there. He spent more time with my brother with soccer and the boys' sports, and my mom spent more time with me in the girls' sports. So Paul played a pivotal role in how I felt as a young child and the success that I was able to achieve. He didn't necessarily replace the father figure role because he moved away before my parents split. So it was like I had the perfect life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then my coach moved away, and I thought, okay, I can still accomplish something. And then my mom and I moved to Scotland, and then that was like, okay, where am I at now? Like, what's going to happen now?
Sure.
So.
Yeah. How did that affect you in your thinking of like your life purpose? You thought your life purpose was to figure skate and you wanted that so desperately. But yet here now you have people in your life that are saying, well, sorry, almost, you know?
Mm-hmm. So when I was in Scotland, I thought we were only going to be there for 6 months. So in my mind, I thought, okay, I can endure 6 months. I know we have to go back because
Yeah.
we're a
Sure.
landed immigrant, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But once the 6 months passed, we didn't come back. And I was like, okay, wait, I thought you said we were coming back. And so I kind of questioned, you know, like, well, what are we doing here? So I was living in this temporary life. Like I felt like I was in a transition that never ended.
Oh, that's awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember a family friend of ours came to visit, and she was one of my mom's really, really good friends. And she had a daughter a couple years younger than I, and we were good friends. And I remember she came to visit us in Scotland, and I thought, oh, now is my chance. I'm going to, you know, ask her to bring me home with her. Like I can make it back to Canada,
yes.
you know, and that didn't happen. It didn't. And that's when I think I realized, oh crap, I'm stuck here.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way out. So, and it wasn't that I had a bad life in Scotland was great. It wasn't that I had a bad life there. It just wasn't the life that I wanted. It wasn't the life that I knew. I missed my dad. I missed my brother. I missed my friends at school. I missed my Canadian school, my lifestyle. And most importantly, I missed skating.
Yeah.
Now, when I lived in Scotland, it was fun. You know, I went to school there. I excelled at sports there. I had friends there. Like I had a full and happy life there, but it was
Something
a
was missing.
Something was missing. It
Yeah.
wasn't the life that I wanted or I would have chosen.
So basically, you had this passionate desire as a very young person. You sort of exuded a confidence that you knew that you had the skill, that you could do it. And without your being able to control your circumstances, things changed. And that passion started to have to be secondary in your life and became kind of, we talk sometimes about how we have passion and fire in our life, but sometimes circumstances and things happen that start to smolder that. So I love that you were talking about it was a good life, but there was something missing. What did you do when you knew that that was going to be the future for you?
Well, I wasn't going to wallow in my misery because there was no point in that. I accepted the circumstances that were handed to me, and I made the most of what I could make the most of. Like there's certain things as a child you can't control. You can't control where you live. You can't.
That's right.
You can't control your parents' decisions, but I could control my happiness. I could control what I wanted out of life. So I threw myself into school, and school there was really fantastic. I remember my first day showing up, and they're like taking me to my class, and we were in this kitchen, and I was like, okay. And the very first thing I learned to make was a lemon meringue pie from scratch, including the crust and the topping. And I'm like 9 years old. Like, how is this even possible? You know?
Yeah.
And so that was like an eye opener. I'm like, wow, school's really different over here. And then I go to the cafeteria for lunch, and they're like, oh, go stand in line. And I'm like, they feed us? Like for me, it was like, I don't have to eat a peanut butter or ham sandwich.
Right.
And it was like, we got hot meals with dessert every day for lunch. I was like,
Wow.
this is amazing, you know? And then we had a sewing class. And I remember the first thing I sewed was an A-framed skirt with hidden darts, a hidden hem, darts and a hidden hem, a zipper, a waistband, a button loop. I mean, like, this is a complicated
Wow.
garment.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the first thing we sewed. So I was just like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I want to learn it all. Tell me more.
Yeah.
You know, so different from Canada. We also had music class. We learned to play the chanter, which then eventually went into playing the bagpipes, but the electric bagpipes. I didn't like blow into the
Amazing.
but it was just fun. I was gaining so many more like valuable lessons and experiences living in this other country. And I knew like I had this deep burning desire to be and to do. Like I wanted to do something.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn. I wanted to grow. I wanted to be the best. I had this competitive edge, so I wanted to be the best at it. So I like was absorbing everything, and I just wanted to learn so much. So I was just thriving because I was applying myself. I really wanted to enjoy my time there while I was there, but constantly asking, can I go back to Canada? Can I go back to Canada? Can I go back to Canada? If I keep myself busy long enough, I'll eventually get back to Canada.
Someone's going to hear me and I'm going to go back. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to waste my time.
Sure.
So
I love your tenacity and that you just kept throwing your all into whatever circumstance you were thrown into, because most people would have some sort of adversity and be like, oh my gosh, why me? I'm not good enough, or I want that. And then they get stuck and they allow themselves to stay stuck. So was that something that you learned, or it was just in you, or you just were a fighter and you were just going to go for it?
I think innately I'm a fighter and I have that burning desire, but I think it's something that people can also learn. I think the best way to explain it, if you don't resonate with that personally, you have to be willing to give up something to get the one thing you really want.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't understand that. You can achieve anything you want in life. Everything comes at a cost.
Absolutely.
You know, and so you just have to value what's more valuable to you, right? Okay, your house catches on fire. You can grab 2 things before you exit the house. What do you grab?
Right.
Those are probably your most valuable things. Well, think that way about your characteristics in your personality, or think that way about what are those 2 things that you want to achieve in life, or
Right.
your goals. It's the same thing,
Yeah.
but you can't have both. So
Right.
which one do you pick out of those 2? You can only have one. What do you want?
I think what's key in your story here that I'm hearing is, as you said in some form, I don't remember the exact words, but you made a choice to say, well, this is what's been handed to me, so how am I going to make the best of that choice? We have a lot of people who would have said, well, because of my parents' decision, I could not fulfill my dream. I could not move forward in it.
Some even might say my parents took my dream away from me.
Yeah,
That's
they
totally
can.
true.
I said that. I blamed my parents for a long
You
time.
did
Don't
say
be
that.
fooled. Yes, I did say that. When I finally buried my dreams to skate, I was 18 years old. I had this timeline in my head that when I turn 18, I'm too old and I'll never be able to accomplish
yeah.
anything. So on my 18th birthday, it was not a celebration of I'm into adulthood. It was a funeral for my dreams. And I
Sure.
buried them away.
Yeah.
And I blamed my parents. And my mom even said to me once, she's like, you got to let go of it. You're blaming me for all the things that were wrong in your life. And I did for a long time, because I'm like, your choices affected my dreams.
Yeah. And that's a very natural response that we all have. You know, it's easier to look at a circumstance and want to say, well, it was because of that, versus, well, I could have chosen to find a way in which I could still find happiness. I could still maybe reach for that goal in a different way. I think that's what resonates with me in the story. I know we're going to be delving further into that story, but even at a very young age, that was in you. Like Jenna said, the tenacity of going, I want to go back to Canada, because Canada represented something to you. That's where your coaches were. That's where you flourished in your skating. And so how long did you end up being in Scotland?
So we were in Scotland for about 4 years, I would say.
Wow.
And we lived like in the Outer Hebrides on an island called Stornoway that didn't have an ice rink. It had it had a high school in town with a swimming pool, and I think there was one other school that had a small swimming pool, but town was an hour away. We lived on the northern part of the island, and so we didn't have a car. So if you want to go into town, you had to take the bus, and the bus went into town twice a day. You took the morning bus or you took the afternoon bus, and you came home at 6 o'clock. That was when the bus came home, and that was it. And the buses didn't run on Wednesdays. They didn't run on Sundays. It was a very religious, kind of like stepping back in time.
Sure.
So, I mean, while I was living in Scotland, I had even asked my mom, I'm like, okay, well, where's the closest ice rink? You know, first thing I asked was, where's the ice rink? She's like, well, there isn't one on this island. I'm like, okay, well, where's the closest ice rink? You know, she's like, well, it's like, I don't know, Glasgow or like wherever, you know, you'd have to fly there. So
wow.
it wasn't an option. Like I honestly looked for options to skate in the UK. I often wonder, like, what would have happened if we lived in a community that had an ice rink? Would I have been happy? I don't. I probably would have been. I probably would have stopped asking to go back to Canada because all I wanted to do was be on the ice. It didn't matter where the ice was. So that's about, finding a different path, or it might not be the perfect situation or circumstances, but you're getting to do what you get to do.
Yeah. Wow.
We love to talk about things like using your imagination. It's where all creativity begins. And you were certainly using your imagination a lot in that period of time, saying, okay, well, what can I do that still fulfills me, even when I can't have the very thing that I want? And that takes a lot of courage to move forward in that. So what happened after those 4 years?
So we eventually did move back to Windsor, and when we arrived, that's when I found out that my parents were separating. And our home was gone. Like, my dad had sold it. He had moved into an apartment, and there was a little box. He opened up his closet and pulled out a little box, and that was what remained of my life.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So everything was gone. My furniture, my clothes, everything. So it was like, okay. And so that's when we were homeless. So my dad had his apartment and he had moved on. My brother decided he wanted to come with my mom and I. And so the three of us couch surfed for a while between friends' homes, which was, it was really confusing because I thought we were going home and my parents were getting back together and I was going to get back on the ice and our life was going to pick up the way it had been 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was like, okay, so we were staying with these friends and then, sleeping on their couch, and then we went to these friends, and then another friend had grandparents that had a basement that they converted into an apartment. So basically they hung up 2 curtains. So on this side of the curtain was my brother's bedroom, and on this side of the curtain was my mom and I shared a bedroom, and the middle common space was their TV and couch, basically. So it was like a rec room. And we lived there for, I don't know, a year, maybe just over a year. And that's when my mom got a job and she started to rebuild her life with her 2 children. We went to school, and that's when things kind of started to, we started to climb back into life.
How did you feel during that time? Because there's, as a child, we all have a lot of emotions, and sometimes those are big emotions. And so when you're couch surfing, while it's confusing, how did you, kind of dig through the mess there to be okay?
I don't know. Looking back on that, that's a good question. I'm not really sure I have an answer to that. I think I just lived it. Maybe I was going through like a little bit of trauma, and so I was just on survival mode. So I don't know if I actually ever figured it out or got through it. I just lived and tried to survive. Right? So I went to school. I was teased because I had an accent. And so the kids picked on me. So I picked up a Scottish accent, and I remember going to school and the kids making fun of me. They were really, really mean. So every night I'd come home and I'd look in the mirror and I'd practice speaking with a Canadian accent. I had to force myself and retrain myself to talk that way, which later in life I was like, I should have kept it. It's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool. I'd love to hear it.
Right.
Well, I think that so many of us can identify with just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Just being in that place where, it's confusing, it's chaotic, it doesn't represent, what we had hoped and dreamed for. And that's one of those areas in our ministry that we refer to as the time of our life of being sort of in a destructive zone, or we refer to it as the
forest fire.
Thank you. I lost my words there. But the forest fire. But that's always temporary, right? It's not forest fires by themselves. They eventually do go out. They burn themselves out. What was the glimmer of hope that you had?
I was still focused on skating.
That's good.
So when we got back, I thought, okay, step 1 done. Check the box. I'm back in Canada. Step 2, we're homeless and we don't have anywhere to live. So, helping my mom, I didn't really help her. She had to navigate how to get her family secure, getting a job, finding somewhere to live, putting food on the table. And she did a wonderful job with that because it wasn't easy, Of
course.
She had, moved back to Canada with nothing and had to basically start over. And then she eventually purchased a home, and then we moved into that home. But the first thing I asked for when we got back was my dad. I asked my mom, can I skate? And she's like, ask your father, I can't afford it, which she was, trying to rebuild.
Sure.
And so I asked my dad, Dad, can I get a pair of figure skates for my birthday? And he agreed, and he took me to this used skate shop, and I found a pair of skates that fit me, and he bought me a pair of used skates. So that was step one. I've got the skates. I'm still not on the ice, but I've got the skates. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my
It's
dream.
almost there.
Yes, yeah. And then I had found out, so my parents said, you can't skate because we can't afford it. My mom's like, ask your dad. My dad's like, ask your mom. And it was about a back and forth. No one wanted to pay for it, And it's an expensive sport. So now you have this family split in two, and both parents are trying to make ends meet. And there just wasn't the extra money to pay for skating. And at the time, I had turned 13, and I didn't know how to make money. I wasn't old enough to make money. And so I didn't know how to navigate that. I was kind of frustrated. And I found out through someone at school that there was a thing called synchronized skating. And back then it was called precision. And they had fundraising opportunities. So you could work these events and raise money to go towards paying for your cost to be on the team. And I thought, okay, well, it's not really what I wanted in my skating career, but I'll take it, you know? And so I convinced my dad, can you let me try out for this team? Please, I begged him. And he finally gave in and says, yes, but, it was my responsibility to pay for it. And so, so we went to the tryouts for that team.
That's a lot at a young age to have to pay for a sport. I remember my mom did something similar to me too, where I had to pay for the sport, and it puts a lot of pressure on you. But if it's your dream, like it was for me too, you do anything that you can for that. That's amazing.
That goes back to, what are you willing to give up in order to get what you want?
Absolutely.
I was willing to give up movies, sleepovers with my friends, going out to eat junk food. I was willing to give up everything, and I was going to be a full-time athlete. I would go to school, and I would apply everything that I could towards skating. That was I was willing to give up everything for it.
That's amazing.
To me, that's one of the most courageous thing a young person, when I'm thinking of you as 13 years old, to be able to say, there's got to be a way. And you listened, and opportunities were really there. You didn't know how to grab onto them, but when you found that opportunity, boy, you went tenaciously after it. And I think that's one of the things we love to talk about for young people is we're always going to get negative talk, or we're going to have life circumstances that we don't have control over. And yet, that doesn't mean that your passion or your purpose in life has to die. And I'm very curious to know that, did you make the team?
I did not.
Okay.
Shockingly, no. So I did not make the team. This team was very competitive, and they had a ton of people trying out. It was very, very popular. And I'm coming in, I show up into Canada, and this thing's already off the ground, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on? Like, what is this? And I had a really good audition. I'm very short, and I was put on the end of a line, which in precision skating, you put your stronger skaters there because they pull the line, they lead the line, they know where to go. So I was put on the end. This is my first day stepping back on the ice in almost 5 years. And so I should have been in one or two people. And so I did the best that I could. I hadn't even seen what precision skating was. I didn't even know what it looked like. So I didn't even have a concept of I'm supposed to lead a line.
Sure.
But skill-wise, I could keep up with them.
And it was skating.
Yeah. I was on.
You were
I
on the
remember
ice.
the feeling of my blade touching the ice is so indescribable. It was like magical.
Yeah.
It was like magical. It was like, I don't know. I can't even
It's like
describe
all
it.
those fireworks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I made it. Meanwhile, I'm just stepping on the ice.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's cool.
So yeah, it wasn't a great tryout. A skater next to me had actually kicked me in the shin with her toe pick and actually cut me and created a little bit of a hole, and it hurt so bad.
Oh my.
But I stood up and I smiled and I skated the rest of that tryout. No one ever knew. And when I was taking my skates off in the lobby afterwards, I kind of rolled up my tights and they had dried inside the cut.
Oof.
And so I had to kind of pull it and rip it,
Yeah.
and it created the blood to start flowing again. And they were like, what is wrong with you? Oh my gosh, are you okay? I'm like, oh yeah, that happened the first 5 minutes. they're like, you didn't say anything. And I'm like, no, I want to make the team, right? I wanted to make the team. Suck it up, Buttercup, So
And these were on your used skates, right? They were
my used skates that probably didn't fit me that great. They were broken down. They were really not in great shape, but they were skates. I didn't care. I was going to make it work. So. Yeah. But unfortunately, I did not make the team. And I found out actually the following year that people had petitioned to the coach about calling me because they felt that my skill set was that I should have been on the team.
Oh, wow.
And they encouraged her and said, you got to call Hazel. Like, you can't just put people on the team just because they were on the team last year. You got to put your best skaters out there. You need to call Hazel. And I never got the phone call. So people did petition for me to join the team, but they were too embarrassed to say you didn't make it. And then, we changed our mind. And but that didn't deter me. I was like, okay, maybe the team sport isn't for me. I'll find another way. My 14th birthday is coming up. As soon as I turn 14, I can get my social insurance card number, which will allow me to get a job, and I can work and pay for skating. So
you are the epitome of someone who, when a door shuts, you go through the window. And I just love that about you, because so many people are like, oh, the door shut, I'm good. And so just that desire and that fire in you is such an amazing thing. So now you're about to get a job, right? So tell us more about that.
So I turned 14 and I got my card in the mail and I applied at a fast food chain. I got a job. It was making $3.16 an hour.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't have the support to get to and from work, so I had to take the city bus. So I had to take a city bus to school, and then I had to take the city bus to work, and work was after school. Skating is
and you
after
would have
school.
to pay for this bus as well then.
Yes, I had to buy a bus pass. I think my parents paid for it the first, or they made me pay half or something. Like, well, if you have a job now, you can pay for half of your bus pass,
Yeah.
So I did have to pay for it. They're trying to teach me life lessons of how to work for your money and pay, I get it. I get all that thing. But in my mind, I'm like, crap, that could have been a lesson, with that bus pass. So working was after school, but skating is after school. And I can't be in two places at one time.
Right.
And I couldn't figure out how to navigate that. And let's be honest, I wasn't making enough money to pay for skating.
Yeah.
I probably could have afforded one session per week and no lessons, for 6 months out of my yearly wages, So it wasn't even a feasible thing, but I did it because I thought it could get me back on the ice.
Big difference, right? Well, I kind of love the part where you, you had something in you that stirred you to keep moving, keep going. It didn't deter you. One of the things that I think many of us lack is that sometimes innate, built-in courage. But it should not be the thing that keeps anyone from going forward. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, you had something in you that you desired passionately. But we know that there are people out there today who don't have anything that they even feel passionate about.
Yeah. So true.
They're kind of lacking that side of things. And yet, I think your story exhibits to our listeners that don't give up. It's almost like, when you put your mind to the thing that you think of. I wanted to be a history teacher. Came from an immigrant family, kind of, and like that. And, work ethic was big. And so I went right out of high school, right into a job, and I let that control my life, so I did not become that person that I wanted to be. But you prove that when you put your mind to it, when you rethink things out, you can really accomplish, even though the journey was long, and it's not even over yet. You have so much more to your story to tell. I'm curious about what it took then, if you had to choose between working and skating, because they were at the same time, obviously you were working. So what happened to the skating side during that period?
So the skating side fell to the wayside. There was no skating side. And I had entered high school, and every season I asked my parents, can I sign up for skating this year? And my dad had suggested, well, you're going into high school, why don't you try playing soccer? So my dad,
What a
being
pivot.
British,
Yeah.
Wow.
my dad being British, he loved soccer. My brother played soccer. He was very good at it, you know. Or my dad's like, why don't you play golf? Or, you know, like sports that he likes. And I'm like, you know.
Yeah.
So he encouraged me to play soccer. And I thought, okay, he's proud of my brother. If I do this and make him proud of me, then maybe he'll let me do what I want to do. So I did it as an
Wow.
approval-seeking thing. So I did. I tried out for the soccer team. I made the soccer team, I think because everybody made the soccer team, not because I was any good, because I had no experience. I didn't know I hadn't played soccer. I played once when I was like 5, I think. So I played soccer in high school. And I kept thinking, like, you know, maybe next year I can skate, maybe next year I can skate. And that went on we were in high school for 5 years in Ontario. It was a requirement. If you wanted to go to university, you had to do a 5th year. So it wasn't a quick 4 years in and out. But I played soccer, and that was a whole nother life lesson on perseverance.
Really?
Would
Tell
you
us
like to
about
hear
that.
it?
Yeah.
Would you like to
Yeah.
hear it?
Of course.
So I wanted to make my dad proud. I thought if I played soccer and was successful at it, he'd be proud of me. And then I can say, see, I fulfilled that. Can I do what I want to do now and skate? So I joined the soccer team, and the first year I sat the bench. I learned a lot in that year. I didn't expect to play because I was brand new. I learned a lot of skills and drills and, you know, built my confidence. But it was a little bit disheartening that I sat the bench, and I was like, okay, you know, maybe it's just a rookie kind of thing. You got to,
Sure.
you know, pay your dues. He did let me go in the last minute of the last game of the season. Hazel, you're in. I'm like, okay. I get on the field, and by the time I run to the halfway, you know, the center line,
Yeah.
the whistle blows, and the game is done. I'm like, okay. So summer came and gone, and year 2, I try out for the soccer team, and I make it, and it's the same coach, and it's the same deal. I show up to practices. Sometimes we practice before school. Sometimes we practice after school. I went to all the games. Like, I was very dedicated. I never missed. And I sat the bench for the whole year. And the last minute of the last game, Hazel, you're in. And I was like, okay. So
Did you fight to play? Like, were you saying anything during the second time? You just took it? Like, you didn't go to the coach and be like, so coach, like, why am I not being playing? So you could find out what maybe in his mind you were doing wrong to, like, try to circumvent that?
I think I lacked the confidence and the communication skills to be able to do that. I didn't feel like I could challenge the authorities. Like, I
Sure.
felt like people
Yeah.
who were in charge of me, it was their way or the highway. I don't know if that was like an upbringing thing where, you know, what you're told to do, you do, and you don't ask questions. And I chalked it up to, I had no experience. There were better players than I. And so I'm just grateful to be here,
Sure.
you know? And in reality, I would rather have something than nothing. I think my mentality was, if I didn't have soccer, I would have nothing. I would literally have
Yeah,
nothing. So
yeah.
why don't I just show up, do the work to the best of my ability, have a good attitude, and enjoy it as much as I can. Even if I'm not playing, could I still enjoy the season? Yes. I was training with my friends, you know? I had made friends on the team. I'm learning skills. I'm building endurance. I'm building agility. I'm keeping myself fit and active and in the athletic mindset so that when I did get back on the ice, I haven't missed a beat. It's just a different sport.
Sure.
So right there, you said a lot in a few words, because what you described is what most people in life do. They settle for the next best thing. The best thing that you wanted was your skating. I mean, that's been apparent just in what you've been talking about. But because that couldn't come the way you had hoped, and there were obstacles and challenges that were put before you, you said, okay, if I can't have that, let me try to do this other thing. And I think we have many people who listen to us that resonate with that. You know, they kind of settled. And literally, when you said, you know, had it been skating, I'm pretty sure you would have been vocal. You would have had that confidence. So those are really key words for our audience to know, that, you know, sometimes we lack our own confidence to say, I can do the thing that I know I'm best at.
Yeah.
And so there you are sitting on the bench doing the thing. But did you stay on the bench throughout your whole high school? Please tell me no.
So, yes and no. I sat the bench for 4 years.
Wow.
4 years.
4 years.
But I wasn't, I mean, like, it's actually odd for me to think about it because if that was in today, I'd be like, oh, no way. I would have been vocal. I would have,
Sure.
there would have been a lot of things
Sure.
differently. But I think, being that young girl that didn't really know how to navigate that,
Yeah.
I would rather have that than nothing. And I wanted to succeed. Like, I wanted to prove that I could do it. So after the 4th year, one of the girls on the team had asked me, hey, do you want to play Summer House League? And I was like, what's that? Like, I didn't even know what it was. I just signed up for high school soccer, and then when the season ended, it ended, and then signed up again. So she had asked me, well, my dad's looking for players on the team. I'm like, oh, your dad's the coach? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I asked my dad, hey, my friend asked me to play on this house league. Can I do it? He's like, yeah, sure. And I'm thinking, if only his answer was that early for skating.
Yeah.
Sorry, I said
that
right.
easy.
If only his answer was that easy for skating. But anyway, so he said, yes, you can play the Summer House League. And I didn't know what it was. And I was like, okay, I'll show up. And so I show up to Ford Test Track, and it was the first practice. And we go through the normal drills and whatever. And he just seemed different. This coach was different, like it just had a different vibe. We go to our first game, and he's calling out names like, Sherry, da-da-da. She's, Hazel, you're in. I'm thinking,
I'm in?
Like me?
I think you have the wrong person. He's like, get on the field. I'm like, okay, I'm going. So on the field I go. And it wasn't like, I was surprised to hear my name, but when he called me, I'm gone. I'm going. I'm out there. Watch me. So it's funny because it's not like I wasn't prepared. I just spent 4 years preparing for that moment.
Yeah.
So I was on the field. I started playing. I was nervous. I had butterflies, and I was like, I questioned a little bit, like, okay, do I know everything? Like, am I going to do it right? I was questioning whether I was going to, make a mistake or not.
Sure.
But once the ball was passed to me and I took off, and it was great. It was as if I had trained for that moment, which I had. So
Right.
I should have known what to do. I just needed the opportunity.
Right. Muscle memory came back, and it told you how to do it.
Yeah, muscle memory,
Wow.
for sure.
So how long did you stay in that?
So that was a 6-week summer
okay.
program. Yeah.
Oh, so
and
it's
then
really short.
Yeah, it was the summer break from school. And it ended with a tournament. And at the tournament, our team was in the finals.
Wow.
And so they had to declare a winner. So it went into overtime because it was tied. It went into double overtime. It went into triple overtime.
Ooh.
And they're like, okay, I guess it's going to be shootout. So it went into shootout. So it's the first 5 people. It's still tied. Then it goes into the next 5 people. It's still tied.
Wow.
So then it goes down, and I hadn't been picked to do the shootout. And so I kind of like slumped, and I was like, okay, here I am back on the bench. I'm wondering why he's not picking me. So it goes into the last 5 people for the shootout, and the person on the opposite team missed.
Wow.
And it was sudden death.
Wow.
If I scored,
You would
we
win.
won. So I remember walking up there going, why did I have to be picked last?
Yeah.
But I was excited, and I just kept telling myself, you've trained for this, you can do it. You know what you're doing. Calm yourself down. You've trained for this, you can do it. The coach always said, keep it low in the corner. Keep it low in the corner. Don't try to be a champion. Don't go for the top corner. It's going to go over the crossbar. Keep it low. It doesn't have to be a hard hit. It doesn't have to be strong. You don't have to be an overachiever here. All you have to do, the ball simply has to roll into the net. And I just kept saying over and over in my head the training that he had been telling me all summer. So I walk up, I pace backwards, I line up to the ball, I run, and I kick with the outside of my right foot to get it in the right corner. The goalie dove left, and it went in.
Oh,
And we won.
yes.
Amazing.
How did that victory feel?
It was amazing. So do you know that football movie with Rudy?
Yes.
They carry him on his shoulder. They dump the Gatorade over his head. That was me. We had buckets of water. The bucket went over my head and up onto their shoulders. And the whole team was like lifting me up and running me around the field. And everyone was cheering. And everyone from the sidelines came running on.
Oh,
and we
my
almost
goodness.
collapsed.
Victory.
It was actually like it was a movie. Like we were on set of a movie. It was
That's
such a great
awesome.
feeling. It was really, really good. And I can't remember if my dad was at the game or not. He might have been. I can't really remember, but I just remember thinking like, finally I did it.
Yes. You
Maybe next
deserved
year I
it.
can skate.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
deserved that moment. You deserved
Yeah.
that feeling. You'd worked so hard for that, and to finally achieve it. Oh, that's
The
just
things
awesome.
that resonate with me so much is that you said you just kept repeating to yourself over and over the things that you knew, and they were things. I've got this. I know how to do this. You were pumping yourself up with positive affirmations. We talk a lot about sometimes how we're like, oh, I don't think I can do it. I'm not good enough. Somebody better. Why was I? We would have that kind of statement, but you proved that when you positively think, you can picture it in your mind. That ball's going in that corner. It's going to roll there. Things can begin to happen, and they happen for you. And that's exciting. That's very
sure
exciting.
Well, a lot of athletes use mental training because your body can't tell the difference between mental training and physical training. And it just goes to prove, like, I envisioned how I was going to set up the kick, how I was going to kick
There you
it,
go.
and where the ball was going to go. And when I actually kicked it, it did exactly what I envisioned it to do. So, you have to really use your mind for that visualization and manifestation to have
Yeah.
those goals and outcomes that you want.
That's right.
Had you done that before in your life?
So this is another like really short story. Short answer is yes. I had a school project before the dominoes fell and my life fell apart and we moved to Scotland, and I was living my happy life. We had a school project where the teacher had given us a piece of paper with 6 circles on it, and it said, when I grow up, I want to be, and then the first circle said age 15.
Oh.
The second circle, 18, 21, 25, 35, and 50.
Wow.
And I had recently stumbled across this piece of paper, and everything that I wrote on that sheet has come true.
Wow.
Has come true. And this is before, like, this wasn't a visualization exercise. This is just like, what do you dream about as a
Yeah,
kid?
Yeah.
exactly.
And I feel like children have this, they don't have a distorted mind. Like, their mind is pure. And if you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, they'll tell you. That's their, like, core belief or, like, dreams of what they could become.
Yes.
And so I just put all that down on paper. And that piece of paper was buried away for years. And we had recently moved, and I found the box of childhood things, and I opened it up and was flipping through papers, and I found this paper, and my jaw literally hit the floor.
I bet.
Because everything had come true. So that right there proves that visualization works. It works. There's no other explanation for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd been taught how to do it, and the teacher hadn't. This is before, like, people talk about law of attraction and The Secret and manifestation and all that stuff. Visualization has been proven in sports to work. It also can be applied to any part of your life, career, lifestyle.
That's
anything.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
I think we might use the term, I said it earlier too, about the imagination. Like you said, children have sort of a pure mind. Everything is possible. They imagine things, they think things, and they see it. I think the visualization part is being able to say, I can see myself doing that.
And not be scared. Not be scared of what could happen or what obstacles they might have to come. There's no obstacles at that point. They're just like, yeah,
gonna do
I
it.
see it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So you didn't go on to become a soccer star.
Well, hang on a second. There's a little bit more to the story. Remember, we had 5 years
Oh, that's
of
right.
high school.
Oh, yeah.
So the end of summer comes, and once I had come off of this high of winning this tournament, looming in the back of my head was, I start school in 2 weeks,
Oh.
and that English coach is going to be there, and I'm going back to sitting the bench.
Oh, man.
And I thought,
yeah.
okay, well, I've done it for 4 years. I might as well do it for the last year and just make the most of it. And maybe word will get out that I played in the summer league, and he'll be like, oh, she can play. Maybe I'll try her,
Is that what you thought or told yourself sometimes, that because you weren't given that opportunity, you thought like, well, maybe he thinks I can't play? Did you make up stories in your head? Because a lot of kids, I mean, I know I did, about, well, they don't let me do that because they don't think I can handle it or something. And I would feel that.
I think I believed in my mind that I didn't demonstrate the skills well enough to be given the chance to be put in. Like,
Wow.
I thought I wasn't good
huge.
enough.
That's
to be put in.
such a big girl answer for a young person. You know what I mean? Like, wow.
I mean, I was learning and I was applying myself, but he really couldn't see if I could play or not because he never played me.
There you
So
go.
he didn't really know if I could play. And I didn't really know if I could play until I was given the opportunity in the summer. And honestly, it was just I just needed the chance. And I think the summer league was so good because everyone on the team played, whether you were very good or whether you didn't know how to play. Everyone played, and we made the best of it.
Wow.
Right?
That's cool.
Your team is always the strongest as your weakest link, but your weakest link will get stronger through time.
That's
So
right.
you'll constantly be a better team.
Right.
So I showed up to high school, and I was literally shocked when I showed up to the soccer field because it was a new coach. And
wow.
it wasn't the English coach, it was my friend's dad who coached us in the summer.
Oh my gosh.
So he knew your capabilities.
So he was a very involved father. He was at every practice and every game. And so he saw me develop my skill over those 4 years. And he probably, as a father, was wondering, like, why isn't this coach playing these kids? You know? Why is Hazel sitting on the bench for 4 years? She can clearly play. Like, look at her. He saw me get better, go from nothing to something. And so I think when my friend asked me to play on the summer league, I think he asked her, go ask Hazel if she'll play for me in the summer.
Yeah.
So that opportunity showed up and I took it, you know. And some people might have been bitter and would have said no. They would have been like, I sat the bench for how many years? I'm not going to go and entertain another coach to tell me I'm no good and I can't play. Like, I could have had a really bad attitude.
That's right.
But I just wanted to have the chance, you know, to play. And I think that when I showed up and he was there, I think it's almost like in my mind I just pictured, you know, the Polar Express with Tom Hanks on the train and how he kind of winks like, you know, there's something there. And, you know, and I'm just like, it was almost like this subliminal like talk without any words being exchanged. Like, I got you. I got you.
Oh, that's
I
so
got
cool.
your back.
So cool.
You're in. You're good. You're safe. This is a safe environment for you. You're gonna get your chance to shine.
Wow.
What was that last year like then?
So in the last year, first game of the first season, you're in. I was like, okay, let's do it. Giddy up. And he had this wonderful system where he called it the VIP system. And so every game, he would name who was the VIP of the game, who deserved the shout out for the game. And it wasn't necessarily who scored goals or whatever. It could have been like, you know, I assisted the goal or I worked my butt off. I didn't, you know, I stopped goals from going in. And so every person on the team, if they played exceptionally well, was named the VIP and we all clapped and cheered for that person.
Oh, that's cool.
It was a great environment to be in. And I remember partway through the season, he called my name and I was shocked. I was like, I got the VIP. Like, I went from sitting the bench and I'm the VIP.
Yes.
And everyone cheering for me. And it just gave me, it was such a morale booster. It gave me so much confidence. And I thought, see, I can do this. I can play. I am worthy.
Yes.
You know?
Thank you. You are.
Yeah. And it was awesome. It was just such a great year. It was like worth the 4 years of sacrifice just for that one moment right there.
That's awesome. So how do you get back to skating after this? Because now you're a soccer star, right?
Yeah, well, actually, the soccer didn't quite end in high school. One of the games, there was scouts at the game.
Oh.
So these two gentlemen approached me after the game, and they said, we wanted to talk to you. And I was like, oh, okay, I have no idea who they are.
Probably caught you off guard, too. Like,
I have no idea who you are. I mean, they're on the soccer field, and they pull me aside, and they're like, oh, we're from St. Clair College, and we've been watching you play, and we would love to invite you to be on our collegiate team, and we'd like to offer you a full-ride scholarship. And I was like, what?
Amazing.
Yeah, I was totally blown away because I was worried about what was I going to do after high school because I didn't have the money to go to college.
Sure,
Like, I was going to have to take out student loans, and I was like, you know, that's a big financial commitment, and what do I want to be when I grow up? And I was just like, I was in a little bit of turmoil, and then this just kind of fell into my lap, and I was like, yes. They're like, we want you to think about it. I'm like, yes.
What's to think about?
So, which is kind of funny because it was a yes because it was an opportunity, but it wasn't skating.
Yeah.
So it was bittersweet.
Sure.
But I was just very grateful because now I went from my coach believing in me to now this college wants me to play
Sure.
with them. So like now I'm finally getting the recognition for the hard work. And I would have to say the biggest lesson that I can tell you about this was the lesson of perseverance. The power of perseverance is you show up and you do the work even if the work isn't what you want to be doing. You do it with a good attitude, to the best of your ability, with 100%, and eventually you will be rewarded. I sat the bench for 4 years, and some people might have given up. What if I gave up after 4 years? I never would have got the scholarship. So you got to stay the course, and you got to believe in yourself, and you got to show up even when you don't want to, even when it's hard, because eventually you will be rewarded for your hard work.
I also want to add to that, there's an emotional piece to that too, because a lot of people allow their feelings and their emotional beings to guide what they're doing. And so I really appreciate you bringing that to the forefront, because I'm sure sitting at the bench didn't feel good at all, and at times could be discouraging. And your positive attitude that you had towards that is really amazing, because many people wouldn't have given it that credence. And so I really thank you for highlighting that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, it was, the cherry on the cake when I got the scholarship, and it was kind of like that chapter had not ended, but that chapter was now complete. Mm-hmm. So what I did beyond that was, extra. But it was like the struggle, the process, the reward, Yeah.
So now you go off to college to play soccer. What was that like?
Yeah, so when I showed up to the team, there was a couple people that I knew, but majority of them I didn't. They were all new. Training was really, really tough. We had to travel for games, but I loved every minute of it, which is funny because it was a sport I didn't want to do.
Right.
But I loved it. It was great. It was challenging. It was fun. It was competitive. It offered a lot of things. I was going to school. I didn't have to worry about the financial burden of, having the loans.
Yeah.
And then once the season ended, I had started the second semester, and there was no more soccer because it had ended. And I remember walking through the hallway feeling this emptiness, like, what am I doing? And I had just come off of an injury. So I had been getting injured a little bit in soccer, and this one injury was really stubborn. It wouldn't go away. And I thought, I'm injuring myself doing something I don't really love or I'm not passionate about. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And I ended up dropping out of college. I just had no motivation. It was almost like I had hit the top and then the balloon burst.
Yeah.
And I was left with, what do I do?
Yeah.
What do I do now? So, yeah, I ended up
And
dropping
you're
out of
in your
college.
mid-20s now, right?
I was 20.
Yeah. So you're early 20s, and all of a sudden, all these opportunities and everything still have not fulfilled you, have not been that thing that you're innately designed to do.
Wow.
So that's a tough place to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think what also was hard was my mom had asked me to move out. She had remarried. And so I was living with other college students in a home. So we each rented a bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a part-time job, and I was trying to go to college, and I was playing soccer. So when things got really tight financially, I had to pick up more hours at work, and I couldn't see how I could do it all. I didn't have a car, and I just couldn't see how I could manage everything. So I dropped out of college, and I started working full-time to be able to afford to live and eat.
So there you are at 20 years old, and you have a whole life ahead of you, and yet the dream that you wanted has not really come to fruition. Today, we're going to end this story here, but it's not the end of the story. It's the beginning. So thank you for joining us in this podcast, and we look forward to you coming back. We are your Ember Igniters, here ready to help you discover your life purpose and to unlock the potential that you have and relaunch your personal story.